It doesn't matter where you sit as long as you are here with us. And I will be the representative of Kumu in that case. Okay. I wanted to ask maybe first about having this kind of artist in residency. Have your organizations worked with that format before? Because in Kumu there was an initiative quite many years ago now to have a special program that was called Artist in Residence in Kumu. We had one artist group dealing especially with neoliberal economic phantoms and stuff like that, and this Kafkaesque mood of contemporary art institution. But for us, we didn't continue this experience working together with artists. And one reason was that it turned out to be quite complicated internally for the organization actually to have this agent among us. Starting from really practical things like to have access everywhere and to inform all your staff that who is this person and why, what they are doing here, and so on and so on. And also I think conceptually we didn't have that strong platform back then. And now, and in the spring when we had this, thanks to Translocal, Luigi Coppola, working with a specific part of our organization, our youth club, I think we also kind of rediscovered this experience for us, and I think we really could think about now trying to find new ways except exhibition production to work together with artists. But I wanted to have, do you have a similar experience from your organization before? Yes. Anna already grabbed the mic, that's good.
I'm first.
Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say that when the new building of our museum was built, it was built together with the apartments within it. So it was planned especially for residencies or, for instance, for some openings where important guests can sleep over, etc. But since we already have that it's much easier because the whole team, the whole staff is already introduced to that practice, so they just, they give them the card, that the security knows who they are, it's all good, they do whatever they want. But we don't have a special program. We just, that occurs when some curator is doing something and they want to invite someone to a residency, and it's just an individual effort to do such programs.
But is it for, the aim is to produce a new artwork?
Sometimes, but that's not an obligation.
Brita, do you have an apartment?
Okay. We do offer since many years yearly artistic summer lab with local artists and young participants between 11 and 14, and together they work on artistic projects, and the projects are quite successful at the end of the week, but every summer it's so hard to get them. So somehow it's positive and somehow it remains difficult. But Toolbox gave us for the first time the possibility to reflect more on integrate them in the usual museum activities, something we since now did in the context of some school projects. We have during the school year we have a weekly classroom in our museum because the local art school has not so much space, and they asked of us if they can bring their two classes to us every week, and we said yes, wonderful, it would be nice, and we organized for them some get in touch with behind the scenes with our colleagues and experts from the different departments. But this is not in the free time, it's always organized with the school. So I think somehow that we have good starting points, but I think now we feel encouraged to go ahead and to make things clearer and to make it really part of our activities. Would be nice, I hope it.
For me, the question is not as simple as it seems, because the Kunsthaus itself doesn't have any apartment, but as the Kunsthaus is part of the Universal Museum Joanneum, there is an apartment which artists can use when they stay in Graz, and very often there are artists using this apartment while they are realizing artistical projects at the Kunsthaus Graz. So this is maybe one part for some kind of residences, but it's not a program as itself. But in the history of the museum, of the Universal Museum, the new gallery had it as a format, artist in residence. So it existed, and concerning the educational part and the participatory elements, I can tell you that we are working together with artists very regularly, because there are several formats. There is a big day in February where we are concepting workshops for children, and there are many artists involved during the last 10 years. And also the Big Draw Day is concepted and organized very close with an artist, and also curated with other artists. Yeah? So it's really complex.
I had another question actually to Victoria Walsh, because this translocal project is a lot bringing together different teams inside the museum and building the bigger internal communication between curatorial team, educators, also the marketing and communications. But I wanted to ask that what are your experiences or the best experiences in that, how to build internally inside the organization, and do you feel it is a problem when you're looking at different art museums or art organizations? I can give you this.
Well, I think what I loved hearing about the projects you've all been involved in. I mean, the project Tate Encounters was trying to address some of the very same things, and I think because I'd actually worked in marketing and in education and in curatorial, I knew what the problems and tensions between each of those and how they all looked at each. This is Tate, but also in other museums I'd worked in the UK. And I would say the tensions increasingly moved away, but actually however much people seem to empathise, actually what they did every day worked against each other all the time. And the project, what we really understood from that first project and then later, and even with the digital and everyone using digital as a tool or whatever, was they curating, marketing and education all had very different concepts of who the audience was. And although our projects, were very resident inside the museum, change didn't happen during them. But what they did become was change after. So Tate Encounters, although it was inside the museum for 3 years, it was treated quite suspiciously, even though it involved an enormous amount of people. Now, 8 years on, it's written into the narrative of, and I think it proved it was anticipating. I think the biggest problem is that all the departments are aiming for the same thing. Everyone's got the same hope. The biggest problem is, how do you build the repeat audience? There are fantastic education projects, fabulous marketing initiatives. Everyone's trying to do the same thing, but how do you produce that new audience that will come back? So we saw the audiences change and expand, but not permanently. And I think that's the biggest challenge, is projects can be very, very successful, but until, I think curatorial is always going to be the problem. And I'm an art historian, I believe in the work of art. I'm passionate about artists, and I, want museums to thrive. But I think, and this is not just in Europe, it's in America as well, that the investment of curators in preserving their expertise and preserving a certain version of the museum is a problem.
But now, when you have heard different residency projects, and also getting, I think, today quite good overview of this translocal network. Maybe you have some comments on or tips on the different 5 museums in order to maybe. It has been a quite intense project, but I think we are all struggling how to make it continuous in a way, that it won't be another, in a way, EU type of thing, that we would really build it into our daily structure and so on. Maybe you can give us some good advice on that, the next steps after we go home today, tomorrow. Great words, yes.
No, none of those.
None of
but one, I suppose the thing where my great faith and hope is, and it'd be interesting to know what other panel members think, is the thing that has really driven change in the UK, and there is change, it's not, there's a long way to go, but change has happened, is that the real change has come from audiences. If you genuinely believe in audiences, and you genuinely believe that the future of museums is about audiences, audience are driving change. If you allow them in, they will drive the change. And I think why I've become so interested in research is that its capacity to actually anticipate 5 years beyond, that it gives enough examples to people to suggest that there is a reason to believe in anticipating the future, because the problem with so much funding is that it's about the problem here and now, rather than anticipating and building. You know, if you were Nike or you're a corporate business and you have research, you're anticipating the future, not just dealing with the problem now or the legacy of a previous problem. And I was talking to one of your youth club members who was saying, we've got a long way to catch up, when I was talking about Tate. And I said, it's not about catch up. You know, it's always about starting where you are and looking forward. You know, it's particularly, I think, in this digital culture, it's moving faster than any of us can anticipate. But I think if you follow audiences, those are where the clues and solutions are. And I think all the socially engaged practices examples, artists are closer to audiences now, I think, than they are to museums. So
I will ask from Maria about that, but Brita had a comment.
Yeah, I just would like to add that what was new for us in this toolbox project, and what was normally in our current projects, it's not like this, but in Toolbox we collaborated in a really strict way. Curatorial department, communication, marketing, and educational, and this was a really new experience, because I think the audience, but even the structures, have to change and to work more in a horizontal way on projects and not in a vertical way on every department is reacting or working on the exhibition, but it was the first time we did this together, really together, from zero, from A to Z, and that was strong for us as an experience.
I had a question to Maria. We are very welcome to have you here for the short moment, because Maria is organizing Lasnafest currently. So if you have time afterwards our symposium, please check the program. And we are glad to catch you from your activities for a second. But I wanted to ask for you as an artist, as an activist, for you, was there a difference trying to work together with art museums than, for example, with other NGOs or something like that? Because you did a lot of work together with Mary before you went to Zagreb, and then working with Zagreb and now being bound to us a bit. Are we different partners as art museums to you?
Certainly your institution. So NGOs, I guess, are more free in deciding what they do, maybe, than any institution which needs more approval, maybe, institution-wise. So in that sense. But we are very happy to do cooperation with you. I mean, we are on the same page, because Although I am not an artist, but our kind of mindset and the values that our NGO has are similar to Kumus. So I guess the most important in doing collaboration with anyone. So either it's a company, an institution, state institution, municipality, NGO, or a private person.
But did you feel that you are free to address criticism both towards to our museum or your welcoming institution? Or because I was also thinking like the residencies were like 10 days, so it's a really short amount of time, and I think that was the determining factor there anyway. But I think that where is the space of critical discussion and doing criticism towards the different parts, because afterwards you have to produce in a way, you have to, because there's an exhibition coming and there should be something to present, something vaguely even. So was there, for you, did you felt that you were able to address the maybe most challenging, what were the challenging moments even?
Me and Katja, who is in Park doing what I'm not doing myself now, we are very happy with the residency, because for us most important is to see somehow the outcome, and for us the challenge was really the public space just outside of the museum. And as you saw from the pictures, we, I guess, really succeeding in making more lively. Also, I guess the struggles were in the beginning to work with the youth club, as everything was really flexible, and the youth club itself was a bit all over the place with their thoughts and with their time. So to balance all this was a big struggling, because we also don't have experience in coaching someone. We always do something like in our own group, but really working with someone, and was really great. What we maybe felt was lacking was to have with us the more like the decision makers from the museum, because with Anna we talked a lot, and also about what museum should do and could do, but these thoughts I feel still stay at this middle level right now, and to get them to really work, it should have meant that the top level is participating from the beginning. Or, well, yes, I guess in that sense maybe it would be better, but let's see how it works. Also, I think it's not always a good idea to force changes, although you want to see them fast. Some things need time. So it's also this question about continuity. Maybe it needs time to settle and then to bring it up again. So sometimes it just needs patience.
I have the same question to our partners. What was the most challenging part for you in this residency, context of residency?
It was very challenging that we had the survey and the residency at the same time. This was a very intense phase because the call stopped and we got all the youngsters at the moment nearly the residency starts. So there was less time to prepare the residency. The other challenge for me was that, but this was also a very big experience, that a lot of questions were raised, a lot of discussions took place, but everything stayed open. So I'm used to work very concrete on a topic, to realize programs or projects, to start processes, to think about topics, but more in a concrete way as it was during the residency. As Oasa had no choreography as Aldo, for example, it was a bit difficult for the youth group to understand what they are doing, and that was the reason why we thought it is important that they should do a research, what is the museum doing yet, because to think about utopia means that you have to know what is the status quo of something, and the students had already experience in visiting and using and consuming museums, but the pupils got a bit lost, I think, and we had to guided them more intensely. Yeah? So it was a very, very strong work with the youth group in this time, and that was also the reason why we decided to go in a long term, to get them in the research phase of get an insight, what is the Kunsthaus Graz, what does it mean to realize exhibitions, what does it mean to set topics in discussions and so on. It's it's not so easy to discuss it, yeah, because it's not just to try out a technique, yeah? It's to think about something very very difficult in a cultural history, of course.
I think.
Sorry, just to finish it, I'm now really looking forward to the exhibition, to get a concrete project, to think about something getting realized. And we talked to our youth group that we will have this project, and they are very, really looking forward to this realization of the exhibition.
In our project, we worked on really strong themes. We had participants with a traumatical biography, and at the same time it was on communication, and communication was the most difficult instrument in our workshop. But it was, on the other hand, exactly what we wanted to work on. I share your experience that even for us it was new, but it was great to put in go deeper in a situation, in an adventure together with all of us, without knowing exactly what comes out at the end. So again, the process is so much more important, and the experience that results at the end. So, but I think this should be mediation in general. And it was, we had not always easy situations, because nobody speaks Polish, and Maarin did not speak English, and then the African people spoke different languages, and I think what was somehow difficult sometimes was to give the German and Italian speaking participants the feeling that they can relax. It was not their responsibility to put things together, and in the beginning they were like, how can we speak together and communicate together? But then it worked. It worked, yeah.
Well, for us, I think the most challenging part was the time frame, because it was so short. And since we founded the youth club just a month before the residency started, we didn't have much time to prepare something in advance, so we basically spent a lot of time just talking during the meetings and brainstorming. And then by the end we started to panic a little bit, because as with your case, we didn't know, will we have some result or no, or what will happen. But in the end we realized that it is a process and that it will continue, so it was easier, and we did something. It was good to do something concrete. Since we are an institution, and that's how institution, at least in Croatia, work a little bit slowly with the bureaucracy and everything. Since it was a short period of time, we couldn't count on getting something now and doing that what we have imagined, but there is a process you have to follow, so that's always maybe a tricky part in working with institutions. So, yeah.
Yes.
I just wanted to add one thing. When you say tips, it's not a tip, but the big difference, I think, between what I was talking about and the projects is that Tate Encounters and the subsequent, they were research projects. And the fact they were research projects meant we could apply for funding that allowed for much longer time frameworks, 2 to 3 years or 4 years. And they weren't output driven. And you take away that instrumentalization of having to do a project that produces something, it allows a very different dynamic. And one of the really strong things working with the student co-researchers in the first project, Tate Encounters, was that they were the missing audience. They'd already rejected the museum. And it was, for us, confirmation of the value of the project that after 3 years, they had no more interest in the museum than they did at the beginning. You know, and that was the point. We hadn't undertaken an educational project to convert them. And that made them, in a way, much easier to use, because we did have your thing about starting from the top. Because they'd been inside the museum for 3 years, the trustees and the top echelons, the directors, all wanted to talk to them and find out what the problems were. And even I was kind of, because you can't control that conversation. And I think the trustees and other people heard things they really never thought they'd hear. You know, Tate, enormous success, la, la, la. And then you have 14 young people saying, but this is wrong and that's wrong and don't like this. And that's hard. You know, it's hard if you believe in the project. But that produced much better knowledge and information about what needed changing if you did want to change something than hearing it from young people converted, because there are lots of people already are converted. That's an easier conversation if you believe in creativity than the conversation where somebody says it doesn't work. I think it's much more creative outside doing this, that, or the other. So I think research and that longer, which doesn't trap you in the project and the short term, that's why I kind of call it a performative tool of change.
Thank you. And as Anna mentioned, time is always a critical factor, as it is now. Thank you for coming up here for the final conclusive comments. We are now going to have a small coffee break. It's 10 minutes, so be quick, fast, and be back. Thank you.
Be effective.